Cognizing the Vedas means that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was one of my first teachers, and he would go to Lake Tahoe. Someone brought him up to Lake Tahoe, probably in 1968. And one of the people in the group, eventually, I learned this years later, became my high school biology teacher in my class of 23 people in this girls' school. And of course, we were all, dreaming to grow up and join the hippies. go to
Queen of the
yeah, become. That was my personal dream. But in any case, it wasn't like.
And it happened at Polo in Harvard.
Yeah, in a certain way, it happened. Yeah.
But you weren't really that interested in it when it really finally happened.
Well, even when I was 16, it was like you wanted to be queen of the love in the abstract. It wasn't about. Messy, gushy, one by one kind of deal. Yeah, right. It wasn't actual sex. It was just the idea.
I always find group sex much better on paper than in real life.
Exactly. So, but in any case, my first teacher in high school really opened my mind up, because I was at that very impressionable age, I think about 17 years old. And one teacher told me that in India, he'd been a teacher at a boys' school for decades. And, the kids really loved him and they remembered him for years and years after. He said there's a time around 17 years old, give or take a few years, when a person is so open that if they get the right teacher at that time, it's going to make an impression on them for the rest of their life. And if you miss that time, then they're just going to be very materialistic. They're not going to have this deeply planted seed that there's something more to life than, just making money and having a good reputation in society. So in any case, another thing that came from this encounter that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi had up at Lake Tahoe in '68, because I got to know Lake Tahoe very well years later when I had a boyfriend who had a place up there. Oh, you've heard about all the boyfriends in the place.
Semi-husband.
They've all been semi-husbands.
No, you had two
Well,
real husbands.
yeah, two real ones, but
I mean, and Alan, I'm sorry, getting married by manifesting, Swami in India, I mean, it was a big ceremony, it wasn't just the shotgun Sufi marriage that
right.
ended within 24 hours,
I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you.
I mean, I think it's very efficient, but,
Anyway.
That didn't really count.
Yeah. Well, in Lake Tahoe, Maharishi apparently had said that the atmosphere was so pure in Lake Tahoe that if you had the same rishis, they could recognize the Vedas. And before he'd always said, well, the reason you can't have people in higher states of consciousness cognize the Vedas.
What does cognize mean?
It means it's kind of like what we say the Bible wasn't written by men, it came from God. Revealed, sacred scripture. It's really talking about a state of consciousness where you don't have human personality involved. And so even if you have people who are very highly evolved and highly developed, if you plunk them down here and now in this society, they'll
get cranky.
Yeah, they'll get cranky.
That's what cranky rishis are all about.
Yeah, that's true. The rishis...
in the Mahabharata where, you get cursed by some rishi and all of a sudden all his tapas just fire you dead practically.
Right. They're always losing their temper and cursing. But there's always supposed to be a method to the madness, that after they've cursed someone, they help start a dynasty somehow. There's some drama takes place. So they say that a rishi's anger is not, it's not a normal person's anger. But Molly thinks anger's anger. Molly has very high standards of enlightenment. Very specific behaviors that you can see. But I don't.
I'm sorry, if you get angry,
I don't anymore. That's why when I went to my Alexander class the other day, there was one guy that was just like super, slumped. The Alexander technique is body work.
Show what an Alexander technique is supposed to look like. Just sit in the way of your wood.
You're supposed to have the head and neck released and away, and the torso expanded and upright, and the pelvis sort of finds its way so that when you're standing, you're imagining the energy coming up and supporting you from the ground, that usually all collapsing happens because you're not feeling support from the ground. So if you are, when you stand, you actually are imagining going in two opposite directions. One where your feet are shooting off and then your head is going up. But I'm going to lose my headsets.
And this is supposed to be where the body is naturally at its best. But it's an unfortunately very uncomfortable position because we're so used to abusing our body.
Well,
and to retrain it into the way it should be it can be.
Well, it's not really retraining it the way it should be, and that's why people who emulate the mastery of Alexander don't really get what it's about. What he was claiming is that by the time a child is 3 or 4 or 5 years old, they have lost the natural releasing that takes place. So if you want to see perfect Alexander technique shape, you look at a child, that they will use their body in the most efficient way. And what's interesting is if you look in the magazines, the most sexually alluring ways to hold the body are also the ways that are the most abusive to the body. It's hardest for the body. But Alexander was saying, how do we lose the intelligence to hold our body well? And he said the socializing takes place, that the kid sees their parents, and maybe the mother's trying to be alluring to the father, you know, like.
The interesting thing is the place where it's the most evident is in the teenage years.
Yeah, right.
And that's when somebody told me that I had beautiful posture, and I was so self-conscious that I swear to God I've slumped ever since.
Right. Yeah, I can see mechanism can happen.
Because I was taking ballet and dance and gymnastics, so we were always focusing on, presence in here. And
right. Right.
So I did it naturally, and then this girl that slumped was admiring my posture, and I was so freaked out that was the end of it. Talk to me about. You were saying.
But I still want to finish up with
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Just on the cognizing, because let me get this back to me. Me. Okay. Okay. When Molly was talking about singing, because she has a beautiful singing voice, and a lot of frustration that her father never supported her in this kind of career.
I can't blame him anymore.
Right. Can't blame Dad.
I released Dad from all of my blaming for not doing what I really wanted to.
Right. That's good. We're all growing here. In any case, I thought, well, how could such a smart person just forget simple words? But I didn't realize that this was similar to cognizing the Vedas, because Maharishi had said, if you take a sensitive rishi who has the capacity to give sacred scripture at the beginning, more closer to the beginning of time than we are now, which of course I guess with new physics, we're here now. The beginning of time could be in this moment too, and so could the end of time. But in any case, cognizing the Vedas, he said, was possible in Lake Tahoe. And that was in 1968. So I don't know if Lake Tahoe's degenerated by now with more casinos or whatever. But that I thought was similar to when you say you could almost write the words yourself. You could, when you remember the words, maybe because you're tuning in to what the songwriter himself originally had felt. Because you just open your heart so much in the singing. Does that make sense? And then we can go on to what you thought I wanted to talk about.
Why do we forget anything? Just because you're good at book learning too doesn't mean that you have a photographic memory in a way.
Oh, photographic memory. Now we get into the whole Kathy O'Brien material. Apparently people who've been abused in a very traumatic way have an ability to remember things. Just like the Kennedy assassination, anybody who was alive then remembers exactly what they were doing when that happened. And so that's the mechanism of mind control and the relationship to photographic memory. And that a good education, we think, a good classic education to develop an ideal society is one that cultivates discrimination, not just a lot of memory. So something like photographic memory, we admire it, but in actuality, it really depends what you're remembering and what you do with what you're remembering.
Well, and also, for example, people that speed read. I mean, Paul was talking about how these people can tell you what's in a book, but they can't tell you what it means. And I think that really focuses on what you are talking about, is that there's no discrimination, there's just photographic memory.
Right.
So useful, but not necessary.
So what did you think I wanted to talk about then?
Oh, the fact that as you get older, you don't have to be as nice anymore because you've lost your looks.
Right. Let me explain that to
Okay.
set it up for the audience. On my YouTube, I make it a policy not to delete any comments. I even, for hot chicks, go to hotchicks.com. I'm even keeping those in there. So now that I'm getting higher in the search engines, I have one show that I did with Frank Craven in August of 2000. And it was Kathy O'Brien's material, and she was talking about sex slavery. So since Frank had actually met Kathy, I asked him to come on the show with me, and we would do a live call-in. I had just heard Kathy speaking with her husband, I think Mark Phillips, at the Ramtha School of Enlightenment.
Also her handler.
Well, yeah, well, this is what some think, but in any case, I couldn't even conceive of that. I was just in such shock having heard the horrific story of Kathy O'Brien about the sex slavery. So it was one of the toughest shows I've ever done, even though the callers were fabulous. And Molly's writing a book.
No, but toughest shows, but also most alive and fun, and you would never know that Paula was suffering.
Right.
While if you're watching it, and
I know.
It's so fascinating that was your experience. Whereas
I know.
And even I was there helping Alan.
And you didn't know it was my experience.
And we were all excited about it, and afterwards, you were all freaked out. And I'm like, Paula, this is great.
I tell you, I was so freaked out that I never watched that show again. I just couldn't handle it. And years passed by, and Molly wanted to see the show because she's writing a book about our adventures in India. I stayed. We were there for 4 months together, and then Molly came home, and I stayed for 4 years, and Alan came back and forth a couple times in between. But in any case, I never watched that show. But because I'm a real trooper, if Molly's going to be writing a book, I always like things to be as accurate as they can possibly be. So for Molly's sake, I got it out again and I watched it. And I couldn't believe it, because even I, having lived through it, couldn't remember. I couldn't see any evidence of what I was going through internally, because I felt that internally you would just see this, complete puddle of ineptitude. And because Frank was just like you say, he had the bit in his mouth, For you non-horseman people, it means explain to the audience what have the bit means.
The horses grabbed a hold of the bit. You have absolutely no control.
Tell them what a bit is. Some people don't even know what a bit is here in Manhattan.
A bit is the piece of metal that goes through the horse's mouth in order so that you can direct the energy. You never can outmuscle a horse, but you can pretend that you're in control.
Right.
But when a horse really wants to run off with you, they put the bit in their teeth.
But they must have to spit it forward to hit the teeth.
Yeah, a little bit. There's teeth here, and then there's a soft place, and then there's teeth here. So you put the bit right in between the two sets of teeth. But they can either go further back or further forward. I can't remember quite how it works, but somehow you have no control whatsoever. And off Frank went like a Bronco.
I know. It's so true. It was dramatic.
But just by the same token, when Joe Friendly, remember when I did the show with Joe and he felt like I was attacking him?
Yeah.
And then he watched the show later and he said, oh, but she was just asking me questions.
I know. And he was so traumatized.
And so he was so traumatized when I was interrogating him or interviewing him, depending on your perspective.
Right.
And what's so fascinating to me is that he shifted so completely when he looked at it again.
I know. That's an interesting thing. When the cameras are rolling, it's like there's a whole different kind of energy.
Or I don't even think it has to do with the cameras. I think it has to do with your perception of another person's intention. You layer all this stuff on, you put these filters on, and then you find out later that it's not what you thought.
Yeah, even when it's your own self. 'Cause that's what I'm saying, you know, the sex slavery one. But in any case, that's a long roundabout way to say that that show is now over, I think it's hitting probably 12,000 hits. And then the more your show gets hit, then the more the search engines pick it up. So when people are looking for similar topics or whatever you've put in your bylines or
Sex
tag
slavery.
words, or Kathy O'Brien or whatever, so then you start getting more and more people. So along those lines, I get a lot of hits from my Webster Tarpley material. And there was one show of the Blacksburg Massacre. And in the Blacksburg Massacre, which was pretty intense because you've got a brilliant mind like Webster, for the first
Explain
time...
a little bit what the Blacksburg Massacre is. Just the Virginia Tech...
The Korean student that went berserk and started killing everyone. But actually, this is the official version. The unofficial is that there were other shooters there, that he himself was sort of like an Oswald. He didn't even have the kind of weapon that was really found to have the bullet of the person. So there's many, many layers of controversy. What's fascinating is that this is in the neighborhood of some nefarious federal organizations, including Kathy O'Brien. She apparently lives in that neighborhood. In something like that. But I don't know. Charlottesville, I don't know. For those of you savvy viewers, because I'll post this on YouTube, you can perfect our understanding, because we just sort of follow the energy. And, you know, like I heard Kathy O'Brien's story, and it was such a heartfelt plea to help her daughter, who was mind controlled in a more sophisticated way. And that's really why I went to India, because when I encountered a manifesting master who wanted to teach people about how Jesus did the miracles, I thought this felt a whole lot more, this to me had a whole lot more promise than writing my congressman. And, you know, look at today, writing our congressman, you know, all these Democrats who were supposed to get us out of the war, Pelosi, everyone says that they don't have the votes and they can't do it. The Democrats, our congressmen, are worthless unless they hop to it and we start the impeachment. But this was my first-hand experience in 2000. I had a gut feeling.
For the Sai Baba stuff too.
Sex slavery, but you know, Sai Baba was sexually abusing people too. So I wanted to check that out too. You know, the whole topic had fascinated me. Okay. Okay, so in the okay, so of the comments that I don't delete, there was one fellow, I think he's called Blasting Caps, for those of you who decide to look up the Blacksburg Massacre by Webster Tarpley. You can just go Webster Tarpley, Blacksburg Massacre.
Please.
Get to what?
Get to the point.
But people might want to check this out, so I need to give them that information. Okay, Molly's getting restless, the bits in her mouth. Anyhow, one commenter had gone through a whole series, and in giving Molly the history of it, he was an example of people who, if you gave them a little more information, would respond in a positive way. He felt that the concept of false flag terrorism is extreme. He didn't feel it was correct. He didn't imagine that you could actually have a government program that would put people into the program that would then create patsies. Because the whole idea of the show that Webster had was by having a Korean student go berserk, you would start to get anti-Asian feelings going. That's what Webster's premise was. But Blasting Caps wasn't going anywhere near this, but I could start to get him near it. So towards the end, his last comment was something about when your looks have gone south or you're over the hill because of my age, then you don't have to be that nice. And I had pointed out to Molly places where if I was younger and had more energy, I might have been nicer and walked him through it slower than I did. But then Molly pointed out something I also felt, and that's to lead you up.
Well,
that went, yeah.
When I was younger and better looking, I wouldn't bother to be nice to people because I didn't have to be. Because I was good looking and I had a great body, and it's like, screw you. If you don't like what I have to say, there's plenty of it. Get in line. You know? I mean, there's plenty more where you came from. So, and I know a lot, I mean, and I wasn't even that good looking. I mean, I know a lot of good looking, really good looking women they don't bother with anybody. I mean, they don't bother to listen to guys or even put half as much energy as you have into all these losers. I mean, not that they're losers.
Not that they're losers.
You know, I think that actually as you get older, the tendency is more to kowtow to people because you're worried about being left with nobody.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
think that women it can go either way. I think that there is an element like my Aunt Mary, you know, I mean, she just is so cranky at this point that she doesn't, but she's never bothered being nice to people, so, and she was stunning when she was young.
And she never bothered being nice?
I don't think so. But she's a little cranky the older she gets.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I don't think that has anything to do with her looks, though.
But you know who's going to respond well to this show is Joe Friendly, because
Right.
Joe was talking about using the sun sign stuff that he's discovered about where the sun is when you're born, and that he feels 6 months apart is most complementary to
well, Paula and I are
complete.
6 months apart, basically.
Yeah, he always attributes that to our great relationship. But he
When
I don't
is
know
he
if you've
born
ever.
again?
He's somewhere in March.
See,
You know.
that's why Joe and I don't get along.
That's why, right?
But you get along with him great, so there's
Well,
the argument right out the window.
But here's why Joe and I get along great. It's because both of us have a vision of video. When it comes down to getting into production, it doesn't even matter if we have different sides of a viewpoint, you know, like global warming. We have completely different positions on that. But when it comes to producing a show about global warming, we're on the same page. And I think it's like when you start to find what your soul's desire is, you
Keep talking.
and you work on your soul's desire, you start attracting to you people who are helping that. And when people are helping that process, they're your soulmate, essentially, because you're working on your soul's contribution. So
Sorry, I'm always worried that your sound is not going to. You know, it's good.
I can hear my sound.
I know, but
I'm listening
sometimes
to you.
hearing is not as good as I
me
always
see
worry
if
that
I
my
can.
voice is going to overpower you somehow.
No, I can hear it. That's why I've got these headsets on.
No, but yeah.
So anyway, one thing Joe's concerned about is, and I don't think you've ever seen this show, Molly, but he expressed in a very sensitive way a woman's position. And I find a lot of Jewish men have the capacity to empathize with women more than Christians, if you want to make generalizations. And here's what Joe did.
And Alan,
He said,
where is he fitting?
I have to rethink that one. Okay, but what he was saying is that there's this tendency for women to have to be picked. And what if I'm left behind? They're like, oh, pick me. And that if a woman didn't have the looks that the society likes, that she would be gone over when, if the man was fortified with knowledge that here's somebody 6 months apart from me, would realize that over and above the looks that society deems as acceptable or not, or more desirable or less desirable, here's a woman that would be ideal, and that his sun knowledge about sun sign and when you're born could sort of be a little push in this direction to get people to look beyond the superficial. So that was Joe's idea.
I don't know if he's willing to follow his own advice.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
I think he has a certain idea of who he wants, and I don't. Maybe,
over and above 6 months apart?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would just be my challenge to Joe, and I'm sure you're going to show this to him.
Of course, because we're so transparent.
is that can you supersede the conditioning of society and pick someone that who may not be as beautiful? The
Let me go
chemistry
get something.
may not be as there.
Let me show you something.
Okay. I'm getting distracted by you're doing exactly
No,
what
but
I
you're
was
gonna.
doing.
I know. I know. It's very distracting. I'm going to show a picture to people here. This is automatic focus.
No, it's not.
It's not
I don't think
automatic.
it's on automatic.
This is the one I want to show. So you think it won't focus? Let's hope it does focus.
Speaking of which, I
What?
hope it was you focused it on you.
It's close enough. Now take a look at that image, and I'm going to show this to Molly. Now look at that image.
Which one?
Guess, with the being left behind idea,
The one on the left?
the pinkish one.
No, I need to my glasses. I hope this is focused on you, Paul.
Don't worry. Do you see that feeling of being left behind and not being chosen? And
that's huge.
and so that's what he's trying to help. Now what? Don't worry, Molly. It's fine. Because what's it going to focus on? There's so many different things to focus on. Okay. Okay.
I'm just a control freak. I want to be.
So now get back into that picture, because Joe will be so thrilled to know we take it this seriously. Although we are over 28 minutes. This is another show. Do you want another topic to do?
Now we have to get into me, like, getting in touch with that unpicked side of me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, so that's probably what that guy left that comment, to talk about looks going south as you get older and not being as nice. Oh, yeah, that's off topic, isn't it?
I know, but it's a very strange image.
Tell him the title of it. We can.
Strange Man.
No, but the title of the whole book, the black book.
It's called Body Beware.
Yeah.
This is sort of like wannabe Salvador Dali kind of like.
He picked that up the other day at, I think it was West 57th, the 7th floor, numbered, I can't remember, it's on the back there. But it was an exhibition.
Here we go.
Yeah. Let me come in on that. Right. So that's the sentiment that Joe really, really tuned into. You can put it down now.
With what?
Of what he was trying to do with his sun sign, so that people could find their ideal partners. Yeah, so that everybody could get picked.
I guess even if let's say in the best of all possible worlds, I get picked by the man of my dreams, and we ride off into the sunset and live quote unquote happily ever after. I don't know if that's enough either, because he may die or he's going to die sooner or later. Maybe I get to die first. But the point being is
I get to die first.
I think that Paul has a very good point. Is that if
Who's Paul?
Paul Lowe.
You want to explain him or no? We'll explain him later.
I don't feel like going off into another topic.
Okay.
Forget Paul. The bottom line is that if you're looking to complete yourself within somebody else, you're always going to be disappointed.